Good afternoon. My name is Steve Gregorian. I'm the president and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club. I want to welcome you to today's very special meeting, and I especially want to welcome our DEC members. And if you're not a DEC member yet, just give me 10 seconds to try and convince you. Your next prospect, client, job, or maybe even best friend is right here in this room. If you're interested in building your networking, hearing from thought leaders, we invite you to join our club. You can do so at econclub.org. And if you're interested in doing it today before you leave, we'll throw in a free event ticket to be used between January and June. If that's of interest to you, you can see Megan outside at registration. Always, as we get started, I would just kindly ask you to silence your cell phone so we do not disturb today's program. And if you've been with us before, we always like to begin with a pledge and a prayer. So let's get started. I would ask you to join me, stand and join me as we honor our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And kindly remain standing as our invocation today will be delivered by Father John McKenzie from Christ the King Church right here in Detroit. Father.
Good afternoon, everyone. We begin. God our Father, you reveal to us your love through your Son and through our brothers and sisters. Open our hearts so that we can welcome each other with our differences and live in forgiveness and in hope. Grant us to live united as a diverse but one people, no matter our political, religious, and social differences. We pray today, most especially for our guest speakers, that you might inspire them to inspire us, so that as one, we might inspire the world, beginning here in Detroit. We ask that you extend a special blessing this Christmas season upon all members of this club, a blessing that touches their family and friend circles, and all whom they encounter this season. We pray for the leaders of our communities, both elected and non-elected, local, state, and national, that they might continue to work together so that greater unity, prosperity, and peace is achieved in our nation and in our world. We ask for your grace upon our students and our leaders of tomorrow, that they might further the mission you have already begun in us. We give you thanks ahead of time for all the good works you have inspired us to do, so that the one label we possess is no label, because you have called us to be one with each other and one with you. Amen.
Thank you, Father. You may all be seated. You are so hip, Father. You're doing that from an iPhone. I love it. Good job. All right. A quick shout out and a special thank you to former Congressman Fred Upton, who's with us today. And thanks for making today's meeting happen. Thank you. And I also want to recognize, that students are with us at each and every meeting, and they're here courtesy of our generous corporate sponsors. Their morning already began with a private reception with our honored governor's speakers today. I want to let you know who's with us. We've got a group from Eastern Michigan University, thanks to EY, Riverview Community High School, thanks to EY, Advanced Technology Academy, thanks to an anonymous donor, two groups from the Alex and Marie Manoogian School, one thanks to Dr. Peskovitz and Oakland University, and another one thanks to Kaitlyn and the Detroit News. So how about a round of applause to thank the sponsors and welcome the students. Quickly, a couple things on your table. One is our seasonal lineup. We're loading that thing up. We've got something for everybody. And before we know it, right, it's December 13th. January is going to be here, and that means it's time for our annual, very popular Michigan Economic Outlook meeting. That'll take place January 16th. And a couple of weeks later, in February, we'll hear from DTE Energy CEO Jerry Norcia. And in March, Barbara McQuaid from University of Michigan has a brand new book out called Attack from Within, and that focuses on disinformation. She'll be joined on stage by our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. So we hope those interest you. Tons more on our website. You can go on and get your tickets before they are sold out. Also, one last thing on your table is our sponsor brochure. Make no mistake, I would not be standing here, we would not be seated here if it wasn't for the generosity of our corporate sponsors. So we thank them a million times for supporting the club. And of course, when we talk about the club, I have to talk about the 89-year history of the DEC. And the history of speakers really tell the history of our country. And December 13th was one of actually the most popular dates in the DEC's history. So Governors Nixon and McCrory, you both now join a distinguished list of 27 other speakers who were on our stage on December 13th. And that begins way back in 1937 with a Japanese diplomat by the name of Ichiro Suma, who visited the DEC, and others included in 1979, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Donald McHenry. 1982, if you're a U of M athletics fan, Fred Upton, you may have liked to see Don Canham on our stage in 1992. 1993, Press Secretary to President Kennedy and Nixon, Pierre Salinger, was on our stage. And in 2005, another governor, our governor at that time, Governor Granholm, visited the DEC. So today we're pleased to add both Governor Nixon and McCrory as our 28th and 29th speakers on this day in DEC history. So congratulations and thank you both. And finally, we want you to use your smartphone to be involved in today's program. One, you can take lots of pictures and share with your social media network using #EconClub. Two, you can submit a question for our guest speakers by using the QR code you see on your table. And those questions are making their way to our presiding officer, who is about to go to work. Dr. Ora Petskevitz does such an outstanding job as president of Oakland University, where, among other things, she's a fervent supporter of their Center for Civic Engagement. She's also a driving force of so many things in our city, region, and state. I'm proud to call her a DEC board member. More importantly, I'm proud to call her my friend. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Ora Petskevitz.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, and good afternoon to all of our members of the DEC and all of our wonderful guests. It's my pleasure now to introduce our incredible speakers. So let me start with Governor Pat McCrory, who's a principled and pragmatic leader. And he first gained national prominence as the 7-term mayor of Charlotte. He helped to build Charlotte from a once sleepy little southern town into a thriving metropolitan city. And then later, as Republican governor of North Carolina, he then led efforts to reform the state's tax code and invest in its transportation infrastructure. Also, while paying off the state debt, raising teacher pay, of course, very important to me as an educator, and overseeing a successful bond referendum to support the universities, the parks, and the National Guard. Governor McCrory, our second guest, currently serves as the national co-chair for No Labels, and we are so pleased that he is, and we are so pleased that he's here today to join us. Now, our second guest, Governor Jay Nixon, who served as a former state senator, 4-term attorney general, and 2 terms as the Democratic governor of Missouri. Governor Jay Nixon knows how to successfully navigate and resolve complex, high-stakes, and to manage a fiscally responsible state. Today, though, he provides the most important role as strategic counsel to companies involved in high-stakes litigation and investigations, and counsels clients on public policy issues. But for today's event, it's critical to know that he serves as No Label's Ballot Integrity Project Director. And so we're especially pleased that both governors are here to tell us about No Labels. So, in order to run today's session, we are thrilled that our moderator is Kaitlyn Buss. And Kaitlyn is the assistant editorial page editor and columnist at the Detroit News. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give our panel a warm Detroit economics welcome to our esteemed panel. Come on up. Kaitlyn, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you.
Which one are you?
Oh, I'm going to go right here,
Okay.
please. Well, thank you all for being here. Excuse me. And thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. There's a lot at stake in the upcoming election, and we're eager to get right to it. Before we start, I'd love to ask you all a question. Show of hands, please, if you are excited about going into the ballot box on November 5th, 2024, or voting for up to weeks beforehand and casting a vote for either Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Show of hands. Okay. All right. That's about maybe on par with what we see nationally. So that gives us, it seems like there's an opening for a third choice. So with that, let's get right to it. Can either of you remember a time in modern U.S. history where both candidates were so unpopular? And how does that play into what you all are here to talk about today with No Labels?
Well, let me first say it's an honor to be here. This club has an incredible reputation, and for Jay and I, we traveled here because of this great reputation and the great people in it. And I also want to say that I walked your city last night downtown at 10 o'clock at night, between 10 and 11, walked up to the skating rink, and it blew me away. What the leaders have done in the city during the last decade is just, the rest of the nation needs to see it firsthand. We were both blown away, and we were just, as a former mayor, I was just want to be very complimentary. It was clean, it was safe, it was energetic. It was beautiful, and I congratulate all of you. In my lifetime, and we're both 67 years of age. He's 5 months older, I want to stress that. We've never had this division. When Ross Perot ran at the same time as Clinton and Bush, there really wasn't much difference, especially in today's political terms, between Clinton and Bush. And about 40% of the people at that point in time didn't like either choice. At this time, 65% of the people don't want either choice. They want an alternative. And we've never seen that, at least in our lifetime. I don't think there are statistics to go back beyond that. Mm-hmm. But so this is a very unique time in American history where so many people, and the numbers keep favoring an alternative. We're doing a lot of surveying, we're doing a lot of statistical analysis, state by state, and we've never seen the numbers keep declining for the two candidates as far as we don't want them. And I'm a Republican, this guy's a Democrat, and by the way, we knew each other as governors, and we got to know each other, we were on Crossfire together. Back when Crossfire was, who were the commentators?
Gingrich and Van Jones.
Van Jones, and they tried to get us in a fight where we yell at each other. I mean, they set up questions, and we refused to fight. And we were never invited back.
And the show got canceled.
So I just want to let you know that I never would have imagined in my wildest dreams that this Republican from North Carolina and this Democrat, former Attorney General, former Mayor and Governor, would be working together on an effort to change our nation and look for leadership that will look for results, problem solving, and civility. So no, the answer is I have nothing to compare it to. I guess unless you go back to Lincoln. Lincoln was the last third party that was a success.
One with under 40.
So,
Quickly from me, I think that, yeah, you can look at the polls and look at the numbers and look at all that sort of stuff, but ultimately, all that is a reflection of the public. And the public is not sold on what's going on in D.C. at all. And D.C. is not doing a good job of selling it because they're not getting anything done and they're not dealing with the difficult challenges we have in a rational manner. So I think the opportunity is the greatest it's ever been, at least in my lifetime.
so what is No Labels? Is it a political party, or is it a political movement, or is it a hybrid?
Well, first, No Labels has been an organization that's been around about 12 years. It was started by Nancy Jacobson, who is leading this effort. The first effort of No Labels, which Fred was very active in, and by the way, you had one of the greatest congressmen in the United States of America. As we travel with him, Fred, you have no idea, when we go on the road about No Labels, Fred is just looked upon with such positive respect, because he was one of the original members of the No Label or the Problem Solving Caucus. So the reason No Labels got together was to get congressional Democrats and Republicans working together, especially when there was such division and they were about to shut down government. People like Fred would stake their political future on actually working with a Republican. And Republicans were working with Democrats. And sadly, many of them then lost in their primaries because they dared to do it. But since then, in the past year, No Labels has become a movement to say people are not satisfied with the choices that the two political parties are giving. In fact, I kind of find it as an arrogance of the two parties. And listen, I've been a part of the system. I've played the game, I've been played by the game, and I'm here to tell you the game is broken. And that's what No Labels is all about, because No Labels is tired of the labeling, which is discouraging dialogue between people like Governor Nixon and myself, and they're not solving problems. But the last thing is they're not presenting a presidential candidate from either party that the people are satisfied with. I mean, that's just the facts. That's not us. That's the people telling No Labels. So now No Labels is a movement which is trying to get on the ballot, and this is the guy in charge of ballot integrity, and he'll explain that real briefly.
Well, at this point, thank you. At this point, No Labels is not a party. We are a nonprofit that is designed to get ballot lines in all of the 50 states. We can do 36 without the candidates, and we're in the process of doing that. We're already on 12 states, which is the maximum number you can be on at this point, and we are well on our way to succeeding at the task of presenting to folks a ballot line after Super Tuesday, after we make the choices who the candidates are. And for those of you that are into details, we'll also have the authority to pull that ballot line back late summer, July, early August, if the campaign is not going well and looks as if it may be a spoiler as opposed to a winner, because this is an engine that's being ultimately politically designed to win. The section we're in now is to get the ballot access. I think it's a three-step process: ballot access, choose a candidate, run a race. And I can tell you that all of us are focused on those three things. But we are not yet in any way, shape, or form a political party. We're not advocating for any particular candidate in any way, shape, or form. We're trying to provide an opportunity and a ballot line for all Americans.
Yeah, we will not be running a campaign. Once we help select the candidates or make the decision to select a candidate after Super Tuesday, if Super Tuesday shows it's pretty obvious that it's Trump and Biden, that's only where the numbers work for a third-party candidate.
So I want to narrow in on that.
So we're just gaining access to a ballot, and then whoever is selected, the candidates run the campaign, not No Labels.
So there's some concern of people that are learning about your organization from both parties, both Republicans and Democrats.
We know that.
That you will be a spoiler, and in fact, there's quite a bit of chatter from the Democrat Party right now. So what would determine you're a spoiler? Is it either candidate getting out of the race, or is there some other data point?
This is an organization that has been built to provide a ballot line because Trump and Biden are rerunning the election. There are people that have problems with both of those. That's the premise behind what we're doing. So the machinations of what might happen as far as some of the candidates and that sort of stuff is not ground that we're working in. We assume at this point, the reason why we're waiting until after Super Tuesday is historically, at that point in the campaign, you know who the candidates are going to be. There's no way to upset the apple cart after that. So that's why that time frame was chosen.
So what is the path to victory? Lay that out.
The path to victory?
Yes.
Oh, this is.
This is a lawyer with statistical knowledge. Very rare, by the way.
But I have two fact checkers to my left, okay? I got the media and my Republican friends, so that if I make any mistakes, you can rest well assured that I'll be straightened out. As a math problem, you got 65% of the people who say, yeah, I'm seriously looking at a third party. What do you need to win if you're a third party? In the presidential, 37.5% is what you're gaming for.
In each state.
Each state, because it goes state by state by state. So you got these voter targets well under 40. When you have 65% and you need to get 37, that differential is significant and gettable. Combined with the fact that since we began doing this data 18 months ago or so, the numbers, you can either say better or worse. I don't want to put a moniker on it, but they certainly are poorer for the Trump-Biden side as opposed to would you like a third choice, a unity ticket, Democrat and Republican, not one side or the other. And I think that's one of the other magics that we have here. I don't think magics is plural. I can't do that. Okay. You should never, for those of us in politics, you should never misunderestimate how useful it was to have George Bush as president. So the path is clearly there. The choice, once a candidate's chosen to run that, there has never been. You can't compare this to Eugene Debs against, back against Wilson. You can't really compare this to Jill Stein. You can't compare this to Ralph Nader. This is a much, as Governor McCrory has said, we got governors, we got senators, we got leaders of industry, we have leaders of all over the place, we have followers. Bottom line is that this is a very strong, capable organization that if the chance is there, will go forward. The last part is, if the chance isn't there, if we look at it and all we are is a spoiler, we're gone. And we've got it set up such that in late summer, we could pull that ballot line if we had to, if things aren't going in a way that's competitive. To me, I don't know if that'll happen or not, but to those folks that are concerned about that, we have at least 2 checkpoints that after Super Tuesday and prior to August 1.
I need to let you also know that the other co-chairmen who are involved in this is Joe Lieberman, former senator, who's run for vice president before, is a Democrat, but he ran as independent. And Ben Chavis from North Carolina, I'm proud. Ben Chavis worked for Martin Luther King, incredible, graduated with a chemistry major at UNC Charlotte, and is become my hero. And knowing what he has sacrificed, not only in his early life, being in prison in North Carolina for 8 years on something he didn't do, and he now is just an active part of this organization and co-chairman with Joe and myself, and really this guy and your congressman. We're all the potential leaders of this great group, with Nancy Jacobson leading the effort. So
we want to hear more about your candidate selection, and I want to get to that process. But before we do that, there is a third-party candidate out there. He has about 20% of the vote. What differentiates you from a candidacy, or the ultimate candidate for your group, from a candidacy like Robert F. Kennedy? And can you take any of that support?
Well, first of all, as he knows, he's put all this effort in getting on the ballot. Other candidates like Kennedy and others have announced their candidacy, but any one of you can announce your candidacy. The question is, how are you going to get on the ballot? And you've got to get on the Green Party ballot, or the Libertarian ballot, or the Democratic or Republican ballot, or the no labels ballot after this guy gets us on all the states, or create your own. And it takes a lot of effort and time, and frankly, it's too late to create your own time. And plus, you're not allowed by law to use super PAC money to get on the ballot, and that's where some of his current money is. So The question hadn't been asked of some of the other candidates. They've announced running, but that doesn't mean anything if you can't get on the ballot. And the effort to get on the ballot takes a lot of time and sweat equity and money and smart people like the governor.
And I think that his relatively vibrant numbers of around 20 really point to, if you did this in organized fashion and had some folks who were really ready to get going, how far you could get so fast. So I've been kind of heartened by the fact that on polls that he's getting that high. I joined Patrick here and say I don't know if he's got the mechanics to even get on the ballot. And plus, he's a candidate that draws from both sides anyway. I mean, he's got the anti-vaxxer and then the Kennedy name, and that kind of gets you a piece of each of the pies.
So what will that look like in Michigan for ballot access? You're not on the ballot here yet.
I'll let you answer
No,
that.
it'll be candidate-driven here so because of the timing of it. And so consequently, when I say candidate-driven, our process with no labels in our nonprofit being able to get folks on ballot can do it in 34 states. The other states are ones that the candidate's necessary for a number of reasons. Michigan's one of those, so it's a relatively late state, but the candidates, president, vice president, have to make those entreaties themselves.
And then what does that look like once you have a candidate lineup? And I do want to get to talking a little bit about what you're looking for. But once you have a lineup, what does No Labels do? How does that mechanically, are you handing it over to the candidate?
Yeah,
No
you hand it over
Labels
to the
hands it
candidate.
over.
Okay.
We are a nonprofit. We hand it over to the candidate. I assume the candidate will do what all candidates do, raise their own money, probably have super PAC, which has changed the game in politics, both good and bad. I have opinions on super PACs, but the fact of the matter is that actually gives some more opportunity for a third party too, who's coming into the campaign late to get up a name ID and to get known very quickly. Plus, I think the media, if we select some very credible candidates, which if we do this, we will, then I think this is making history.
Talk us through that a little bit. What kind of candidates are you looking for on this ticket?
Well, we're looking at people from, and people are looking at us. It's a two-way street in candidate selection. There are people considering us, and we're considering people at the same time, but from the military, from business, and from politics, both current and existing retired. Senators, governors, business people, and military, retired and maybe even current. So
People with no
we'll have a
labels.
pool of candidates, Democrat, Republican, Independent. Our goal has always been have a Republican and a Democrat on the ticket. It could be an independent. We might, who knows? We're going to do, hopefully, the ticket that will have the best opportunity to win and is the most qualified and appealing. And we'll have a process in January which we'll announce for that.
I think everybody's committed to being bipartisan. I think you have one spot as a D and one spot as an R. You talk about who's being considered. We're at the process now, at the time of this, in which people are beginning to consider us. You've seen in the press in the last few weeks just folks like Joe Manchin or Cheney, former Congresswoman Cheney, both talking about things of that nature. And so I think that as long as we stay strong, get our ballot, we will not have a difficulty doing two things. Number one, attracting extremely high quality candidates. If you're going to run for president and you don't have to run a primary in 36 states, that's a nice Christmas gift. And the second thing is, because of Citizens United and super PACs, unlimited funding can go to these things now, which I disagree with. I argued for campaign limits successfully at the U.S. Supreme Court in Nixon v. Shrink. But anyway.
You were right. Okay, I will say you were right.
I don't think that finances will be the problem. Organizationally, the parties, have their traditional organizational turnout vote and things like that. Those are the areas, the mechanics of politics, where I think we've got the biggest distance to cover, assuming we get a ticket and go.
I will say one other thing that's a part of our selection process, will be part of our selection process, which potential candidates that are calling Nancy and others, and candidates that we might go, hey, that'd be interesting, based upon people we have grassroots organizations in every state that go, hey, have you considered that, considered this person? We came out in New Hampshire about 4 or 5 months ago, and we kicked it off in New Hampshire, which we thought was very appropriate, a common sense booklet of 30 ideas. Now, isn't that rare in politics, where we actually came up with 30 ideas on an issue that he's very interested in, and so am I, on the deficit, on immigration, on crime, on some of the most controversial subjects that you can imagine that every politician repivots on. We actually have written down 30 ideas called the Common Sense Agenda. And it wasn't us who came up with it. We went and asked the American people. And the American people came back, and we found out most American people, for example, in immigration. I'll give you an example. This is where the Democrats and Republicans can't get together, and I still can't figure it out. But the American people have told us through surveys and focus groups that we need a strong border. We need to probably change some of the laws of loopholes that let people just come and disappear. But at the same time, we need to let the dreamers in. They're like 22, 23, 25, 30 years old. We need to let them become citizens. And yet, for some reason, the Democrat and Republican Party, who have to appeal to their base to win a primary, which Fred knows very well, can't do both. And that's the fight going on in D.C. as we speak, when the American people, by 70%, are saying, can't you do both? It's common sense. So it's not as complicated as people think, but the parties don't want to come to that conclusion because it doesn't meet the 100% purity test that the parties require in primaries. And that's what's impacting a lot of this lack of results in Washington, D.C. right now.
So you have a policy platform that you've gotten input from the American people. You think this is kind of what they want. Does that serve as a litmus test for a candidate? And would it direct whether it's a Democrat or Republican?
That's a great question. Do you want to answer that? And I'll answer.
I don't think an organization called No Labels doesn't have many litmus tests. In that sense, we try not to. Well, I understand it's a proper use of the word. I understand exactly what you're saying. I think that as far as a litmus test, bipartisan, focused on working together, realistic and honest, but I do think that running through a significant core of our work is some of these fiscal issues. I really think that of all the folks I've gotten engaged with across the country and involved with No Labels, people are deeply concerned that we're spending the level of money we are and drawing the level of debt we are, especially when interest rates go up and you're sitting on 5%, 10 years treasuries, and that all that means is for 10 years, you and I got to pay the 5%. Because we're the taxpayers. And so I think that the fiscal part of this, we have seen, we're not telling a candidate what position they'll take or whatever, but I think there's a will, a confident will among a significant number of the 64% of Americans that yes, we can do it. And I bring a long history in that area. I mean, I began governor in 2009, in the middle of the recession, that recession, and after 8 years as governor, had 4,036 fewer employees, AAA credit rating, never raised taxes, educational outputs extremely high, mental health outputs much higher, and unlike DC, where they say if you cut a budget, they beat you in the next election. If that was true, I don't think I would have got almost 60% in a re-election against a major candidate. I think the public appreciates when public officials tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not saying what you have is not a good idea. I don't have the money because it's your money, not mine. And I think until we begin to get some fiscal sanity in this country, begin down that path again, it hadn't been that long since we had it. I mean, Clinton balanced the budget in the second term. I mean, this is not impossible stuff. Everybody wants to tell you it's impossible, impossible, impossible. So if I was going to pick one area where I think that you're going to want people to say, yeah, we're going to willing to expend some of our political capital to sit in these tough sessions to begin the long, complicated, and difficult process of getting fiscal sanity, I think that is one of the types of issues that we will be listening to the candidates as they step forward.
In fact, we've had people at our table at No Labels meetings, currents from Manchin to Sinema to Cassidy, who are being honest about Social Security, which will be bankrupt in 7 years. And once it goes bankrupt, current law says 25% reduction in everyone's Social Security, and yet during the State of the Union speech where Joe Biden said, I will not touch the Social Security, and then he dared all the Republicans, neither will you? And they all yelled no. They had a consensus in the chambers of doing nothing. Well, doing nothing is doing something. It's destroying our Social Security system. And so, yeah, we'll be talking to candidates who will be honest about issues like that and the fiscal sanity. And we've had, like Manchin and Cassidy and Sinema, have been very active in the problem solvers' efforts in D.C., who clearly have the courage to say something like that and are willing to withstand the political ramifications. And I'm finally seeing a few presidential candidates, a little honesty coming out, a little on this issue. So those are some examples.
Yeah. Those are the kind of places we're going to look for thoughtful, difficult problem solvers who are committed to trying to only spend the money that the people send us, as opposed to asking their grandkids to send us more money that we can use 20 years from now.
And we're speaking to the young people back there. We're worried about them having the opportunities that we had.
So assuming you can make it through this process, that you stay in, you put up a lineup, how will you spread the word of mouth? And how will you get people, people are used to a third party or Democrat or Republican, how will you spread this message? And how will you get people to actually check that box on a ballot?
First place we go to is Detroit, Michigan Economic Club.
Great.
I mean, that's where it all starts, right here. You could be making history right here. We're speaking to a very influential group of leaders in a state, by the way, whichever one goes, you have to win Michigan, you have to win North Carolina, you have to win Florida. I hate to say it, if we're involved, every state's going to be in play.
How much money will that take?
Well, the campaign, I can tell you, we're spending
That'll be that
our
campaign.
only money,
Okay.
we're only concerned about getting on the ballot.
Right.
We're spending
Be around
most of our
60
money
60
on
million.
$60 million.
For a couple of years. That's about what ours is. As I said, and I know this sounds strange, I really don't think money is going to be the problem. How do you organize this, folks? And in the modern world that we're in, I mean, things can get going really, really fast. Really fast. It's like the Taylor Swift-Kelsey romance.
I've never heard you make this comparison. This is quite, well, you're from
He flew to like Argentina for a date, like 2 weeks after he met her.
Kansas City is in Missouri.
We know Taylor Swift would win if she was on the
Hey,
ballot.
you guys, I told you, Fred, you guys beat the Blues the other night, last night, and we fired our coach. Thank you, Detroit. I mean, I kind of like Berube. He won us the Stanley Cup. So I'm hesitant to talk about any of the sports stuff around Detroit.
So then we have one more question. We have time for one more. But that kind of answers my question. Are you waiting too long to put a candidate up?
No.
Or if you have someone with high enough name ID, I suppose that's not as much of an issue.
There is
There is a deadline.
There's moments here. This is not a hard sharp. When we started, the lines we drew was we want to wait Super Tuesday so we know who's running. We need an out date in the late summer in case the folks that get chosen aren't doing a good job. Those were the two things that we kind of had to have in order to be able to protect us. The other stuff is pretty fluid. I mean, this is just, and as far as the public, boy, oh boy, there'll be some ads run on the Super Bowl for products nobody's seen that the next morning people will buy. Okay? Mm-hmm. You can get information out in America. Okay, we get the right candidates, the opportunity's there, and we've got 4 or 5 months to put it together. With the right candidates, this is eminently doable.
Okay. Well, with that.
Is Kansas City going to be in the Super Bowl? That's the big issue.
We need a receiver. The guy that we sent to Miami is going to be MVP was the problem.
Well, thank you for
learn about
answering
all
all of
sides.
our. I'm sure you all have more questions, so we're going to hand it back over to Ora.
Yeah,
Thank
that was
you.
great. That was really great. You guys were terrific, and Kaitlyn, you did a fantastic job with that. Well, there are a lot of audience questions, and I'm going to try to organize them all together. And I want to thank the students that are here because, and I can't tell who asked what, but I imagine that some of these questions came from students because a lot of them circle around a similar theme. So I'll try to sort of merge them together because several of them asked something quite similar. They imply that one of the reasons that the current candidates are not really favored, and maybe why we have a problem, is that there's an age problem with 2 of the current favored candidates, and they want to know if you would put an age cap on the candidates that No Label might end up selecting. So I'd be interested in, and I'm sort of merging some of the questions that came in here from the audience. So what do you say to that? Because they seem, and you made a comment
I'm
yourself
always
about
reminded.
your own age.
I had this friend that
You're much older than I am, so that's why you're.
ran for Congress. A group of people down home supported him, and he ran for re-election. Every year they'd have a little fundraiser for him. And they came back after the third year, and he said, I got an idea. We need to change the term of congressional members to 4 years. That way you'd only have to pay your money every 4 years. And the guy leaned over and said, Congressman, we didn't elect you to screw with the Constitution. So I only say that I don't think I think it's the public. I want to defend this ballot, why I'm involved in ballot integrity. I think the public has a choice, whatever the age is. I think when you start talking about designing who can't be some based on age or something else, I just don't think that's going to be a factor for us. Obviously, we want the energy of younger folks, and quite frankly would lean that way, but I don't think putting a rule in that says that if you're as old as Donald Trump, you can't be president is a good idea for us.
Do you both feel that way?
Yeah, we haven't talked about that at No Labels, having an age limit. And, in employment, that's against the law, by the way. So you can't consider age in employment, and I wouldn't want to break any EEOC laws.
Okay. And we had several questions here also about just your thoughts about why is there so much divisiveness around in the country? What is the reason why we have this problem? And we heard your solution, which is to put both a Democrat and a Republican on the same ballot. But what is the reason for the problem in the first place?
I think there are a number of reasons. We're at fever pitch here, and it's hard to say which one of the viruses got us the worst. But I think one of the solutions is having a president and vice president that can communicate and do communicate in a rational and timely fashion with the American public. When you think back at the times of Roosevelt and the fireside chats, or you can go Reagan, you can go all the way through, Democrat or Republican, it doesn't really much matter. America needs a president that they can connect to and talk to and thinks and understands that he or she understands their problems. And right now, for a myriad of reasons, the yelling is one, other reasons also, that's not happening. And I'm one that believes that when we get back to a normal time in which the president is someone that folks can relate to and talk to, and he or she can articulate their policies in a rational, realistic way, instead of everything being thrown through a political lens. These days they say stuff and then they write it, and then the next day they analyze it in a political perspective. I think that's very important. Number two, I think that we're at a time in this country in which people defining who they are based on where they're from, hugely important to all of us, but it's leaving some people out. There are a lot of folks in our country that feel like the entire system is stacked against them and that they can't get to the top. And I don't necessarily mean economically. I mean educationally and everything else. And I think that provides us yet another opportunity for folks that want to have a positive view of the future as opposed to a negative.
I'll add one other point is that we've become more segregated in the last 30 or 40 years by what we hear and see. We only watch and read what we agree with, and the media has their business model is applied to that. So, and I know this, I've done a lot of Meet the Press and was an NBC political analyst for the past 2 years. Everyone, every broadcast, every newspaper, every even internet knows who their audience is, and they're going to appease that audience as much as possible so not to lose them. So, back when I was growing up, my radio station played the Beatles and Motown together. We didn't have segregated music. Well, now apply that to TV or the social media. We are more segregated now forever. The young people are listening to one thing that we are not hearing. Old people are listening to whatever. Black, white, we're listening in our own segregated vacuum, and I think that's hurt us a lot. And the second thing I'll say this, the reason I like the term no labels is we love to label people. When Ben Chavis and I first got together on this, Ben from North Carolina, he thought I was a right-wing extremist and I thought he was a left-wing extremist because that's what the media portrayed us as. we got to know each other, and we're going, my gosh, you're a human being. You're common sense.
You're democracy enthusiasts.
Yeah, we love our country. We love our country. And we've become best friends. And we're in this together because we both love our country. And I said this to the young people earlier, our Constitution, and Ben and myself and the governor have all had to deal with violence. Ben in an atmosphere that I can never imagine in the civil rights movement in the early 60s when he was working for Martin Luther King. He's been in prison for 8 years for a crime he didn't commit. I can't imagine being canceled that way. But I've had to call the National Guard to deal with riots. I watched January 6th, and I see our Constitution, that piece of paper of our Constitution, being the difference between anarchy and civility. I'm picking civility, and so is Ben Chavis, and so is Joe Lieberman, so is Governor Nixon, so is the great congressman. That's the only thing that makes our United States unique, is that we don't turn to violence when we have disagreements. And the governor and I are trying to show we can get along, we can have fun with each other, and that's why we occasionally joke, because we're going to take the issue seriously, but at times we're not going to take ourselves seriously, but we take our Constitution seriously. And I think the two parties and many of the extremes are forgetting that, and we're seeing it now more than ever on our university campuses right now. It's unacceptable. So we're trying to be role models, and that's important. And I really credit Ben Chavis. Ben Chavis has taken a lot of heat. You're taking a lot of heat from your party. I'm taking a lot. We've been canceled. We've been canceled by our own party because how dare you go against our power, our monopoly. And we're going, sorry, the Constitution's more important.
We're doing okay. We got the microphones here.
That's true. We're at the Detroit Economic Club.
Canceled here.
We're doing okay. We ain't totally canceled yet, bro.
Well, and there's a related question here, and it may be that you're still too early in the process to answer this clearly, but someone here is asking which demographic has been most receptive to your message?
That's it. We have.
It's interesting. I mean, we're still in the process of figuring out who that 64% is and all that sort of stuff. But I think that a couple of lanes are really clear. Number one is relatively younger voters. They are more turned off by what's not happening and the inane nuance of day-to-day Twitter fights than older folks. So we see, when I say younger, I say 40 and under. You also have a significant number of people, very responsible, especially young families, that are just really concerned about where the country's going. If you're a young couple with 2 kids and you both got jobs, but you're not getting rich, but you're paying the bills, and these guys and gals up there are not even worrying about the money and they're just fighting about stuff, you get nervous. And you get this stress level. And we find those younger married couples are also very realistic. I mean, if you have been a married couple with kids, you know what realism is. But that's another group that I think is like, okay, what are we going to do? We can't keep doing this. But those are just broad categories. We'll dig into that and have much more specific data over the next 6 to 8 weeks.
The core bases are probably people, they're in with Trump and Biden. There's a core base that's probably not going to change, but there are a lot of people that feel uneasy, and that's where that's what I would recommend to a candidate in the future to focus their time and attention to, is that middle, and it's not even middle, it's both conservative and liberals, how they define.
Also in the polls, if you pick it up, there's about 36% of the folks, at 35.9 in the last numbers, they're what the pollsters call double haters. Wouldn't vote for Trump, wouldn't vote for Biden. That number for the last election was 3%. Okay, so we're in a world in which a substantial plurality of the people are upset and headed towards mad, and they got one way to help solve that.
I think
Could have
we
been
have
an
a number
alternate
too.
a name suggestion.
How many million, I forget the number, how many million in the survey we just did now agree with this concept of third
It's like
party?
83 million.
83 million, and it was
82.8.
just 6 months ago, it was 20% less than that. I mean, that's incredible movement. And when we started this process, I assumed people would come to their senses by this time. But the trend is just the opposite way. So that's why
You're an eloquent speaker, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm at the Detroit Economic.
I know, you're doing it. You're doing it.
This is where the movement begins, right here in Detroit, Michigan.
I hope.
Okay, last
I'll
question
hold
I'll
you
ask
to
you
that.
before I ask you each a personal question.
Sure.
You mentioned that on the platform, you gave an example of an economic area that you would think that no labels could really focus on that would be advantageous from the position of no labels. Somebody asks about international issues like Ukraine, the war in the Middle East. Where do you think there would be an advantage for no labels in world events?
I think we will be, first of all, it's up to the candidates. They'll be very quiet about international relations. Those are decisions that are currently being made. The people with the real information and what's going on are not the people sitting here right now. And I do think, though, that generally the folks that are involved in no labels feel very strongly about backing our allies, feel very strongly about the concern of an aggressive Russia, and extremely concerned that our long-term friend in the Middle East was brutally attacked. So those are underlying concerns, whether they lead to specific policy implications or not. But I will tell you that the folks in our area that I'm dealing with are pretty sensitive on all those areas.
Our No Labels booklet actually mentions both supporting our allies in the Middle East and including Israel. That's in our booklet, and this was written 4 months ago. And it also, and by the way, this is what the American people were telling us. And it also talks about Russian aggression and making sure that doesn't expand, because many of us older guys whose parents fought in World War II understand the implications of that and the long-term cost. So if you pull up nolabels.org, you can read specifically where No Labels heard from the American people on those two issues, and it's pretty strong statements on policy.
Great. Now, each of you has had an incredibly illustrious career in your own right. You're obviously representing No Labels, but I'd like to hear from each of you to give us just a moment about advice that you would give yourselves back when you were 25 years old.
Do you remember that long? You're a lot older than I am.
Yeah.
I didn't get married until I was 31. So those were some wandering years. In that sense. No, I mean,
So what
for
would
those who have not met my wife, she's
what would you tell yourself at 25? I think that's the question, right?
Yeah, your advice to your 25-year-old self.
I'll tell. Well, I shouldn't tell weird stories. My wife and I actually met in law school.
This is
But
way too much.
didn't date until much later. And I should have, both of us are like, man, that was our mistake at 25 was that. I mean, not deciding to get together sooner. That sounds weird, but I mean, as somebody who's got two sons and has watched a lot of stuff over the years, if you find somebody you want to live the rest of your life with, join up and do it. That's all I got to say. Marriages only get better the longer you're with them. And so my sense is, that's very personal. What would I do differently? For me, people used to ask me to give career advice. And I said, I'm the worst guy giving career advice because I went to a grade school and a high school in my hometown where my dad was mayor, my mom was the president of the school board. I went to the University of Missouri, which is the only place you can go if you're me. I went to the University of Missouri Law School. In the Nixon family, educational options begin upon graduation from law school, and that happens to be at age 25 now. So I didn't have any options before 25. After that, the big choice was whether to go back home and practice or somewhere else, and I'm really, really glad I went back home to practice. Let's just put it that way. I think going back home at that age was a smart choice to make. A number of my friends didn't. They took a job in LA or in New York or somewhere like that. And I think in the line of work I'm in, I was really, really glad that I stuck around home.
Sounds like it served you well. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'll relate it.
I gave you enough time to think of something good. Well,
It's just gonna be. This is gonna be blue.
I'm talking about my family. I'm talking about all this stuff.
If this were a debate, I would win the election.
I know, but
That's what I'm about to do.
good. I set it up. I hope you can.
I would tell my 25-year-old self not to label people because I disagree with them on one or two issues, or because of the way they look or act or dress. And I think we've all been caught in that trap before, to have immediate assumptions when we first meet them or first introduce ourselves to them, to have this immediate label, oh, that person's this. And in political terms, I've been labeled as a right-wing extremist by the media and by others, and I've been also labeled a left-wing rhino by the President of the United States. And I'm going, no, I'm not. I'm like most people. I look at each issue on its own merit. I'll look at guns and crime and immigration as its own complex subject. And on some of those issues, I'm very conservative. On other issues, I'm rather moderate and would be considered liberal in my party now, or I'd be a rhino. But every issue, I look at it from a different standpoint. And I don't want to be a member of any one club or fraternity that thinks alike. I get bored with people who all agree. I get excited by people who want to have civil discourse and maybe come to a conclusion. And the dilemma I had in politics, and it was one of my downfalls, is I was labeled. And your headlines are extremist. And if you notice the commercials that are thrown toward candidates, Fred, you've had this, extremist Fred Upton didn't do this or whatever. I'm sure you're the exception. And that's part of the problem. Labeling people right now at any age stifles discussion and civility. And we've got to get away from it as politicians, as media, because it's a lazy form of communications. When you can't win an argument without labeling someone, it reminds me of when my dad would catch me cussing. He goes, son, if you resort to cussing, I know you've run out of logic. And he was right. And now in political and media terms, just turn on the cable TV, MSNBC or Fox or CNN, they'll label someone so quickly. And it's to stop discussion.
Well, let's give Kaitlyn and our No Labels panel a terrific round of applause.
Thank you, Aura. And I've got to tell you, governors, when you were up here answering some of Kaitlyn's great questions, I was surveying the room. There was a lot of heads nodding in favor with common sense approaches. So keep moving forward. We like what we're hearing. Thank you so much for being with us. We want you to come back. Will you come back and visit us again?
I'm going to go walk downtown in the summertime next time. But I hope to get on the ice rink sometime too. And I want to see the Motown Museum. I miss that. So Berry Gordy is, I saw it on Showtime, the special on Berry Gordy. I mean, you guys are historic when it comes to the arts. So congratulations. You got a great city, and I've enjoyed my time here. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
I don't know when I'm going to be back, but I'm going to pretty much guarantee that Missouri is going to beat Ohio State in the bowl game. So that's all I can do. That's all I can do in the short run. We're December 29th in the Cotton Bowl.
And the Panthers are going to win more than 2 games next year. Maybe. I don't know.
We've turned into an online betting club. Yes. Thank you guys so much. Kaitlyn, Aura, thanks for your amazing participation in today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to join the club if you're not a member already. We're a bunch of really cool people. So on time, every time, this meeting of the Detroit Economic Club is now adjourned. Happy holidays, everybody.
Sure.